Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the Sefer Iyov, the book of Job. We are about to study together today chapter 15. In chapter 14, we finished the long, 3-chapter long response of Iyov to his three friends. His three friends taking the approach that if you're suffering, it's because you're sinning. And people that sin suffer. People that don't sin, people that repent, people that pray back to God and repent for forgiveness will get rewarded. And Iyov insisted upon his innocence, and Iyov tried to take the approach that we don't know and understand why God runs the world the way he does, why it is that innocent people suffer, and why it is that wicked people are rewarded, and that in the real world, that's how it works. In the chapter 15 and the upcoming chapters, we again have all three friends respond to Iyov again, and they double down. They double down on their approach. They don't listen to what Iyov said, even though Iyov insisted that it reflects reality, that reality is that we don't see a world that runs in a way that we think it should. But they double down. And they become more direct, more critical of Iyov, of course, because he's been so stubborn in their eyes that he still hasn't listened. In their mind, they interpret everything Iyov says about God when he says, if I don't understand, if I suffer for no obvious reason, and why live? Why do anything? They understand that as blasphemy against God. Whereas Iyov tried to explain to them that that's not blasphemy against God. That's just asking God for understanding. That's asking God to, what's the purpose? What's the point in being here if I don't see justice, if I suffer despite my innocence? But this was the issue. This was the issue that remains between the friends and Iyov, and we're about to read about how the friends double down. So we start again with Eliphaz in the same order as the first couple speeches that Eliphaz gave. Eliphaz Temani answers Vayan Vayomar, and he says as follows. Remember, Eliphaz doesn't get it. He doesn't get what Iyov was trying to teach him. So he answers, Hechacham Ya'aneh Das Ruach. Does a wise person answer, in other words, respond with knowledge that's just wind, in other words, worthless knowledge? In other words, you're giving speeches that are just mumbo jumbo. V'malei kodim bitno, and he fills his belly with the wind of the belly is where wisdom comes from, and the common sense comes from in the ancient world. So he's filling his belly with kadim, with the east wind, with nothing. Right? You're just saying nonsense. Everything you say is nonsense. Hocheach b'davar lo yiskon. Should he just double down and argue on something? Right? Lo yiskon. It won't help. That lo yiskon, I'm using the Ralbag's understanding of the word yiskon here. It's not going to help. Right? He can go ahead and double down. He keeps pressing his point, Tocheach bedavar, but lo yiskon, it won't help. Umilim lo yoil bam. And the more words he pours out, it's not going to help. It's not going to make his argument any better if you give a longer speech. That's all Eliphaz saw in Iyov's words, was just a longer speech. Av ato tofer yirah. Right? You still won't bow down to God. You still won't give in. You still won't humble yourself. Eliphaz is accusing Iyov. Afata, even now, you tofer yirah, you are tearing away the fear, the awe of God that you're supposed to have. V'tigra sicha lifnei el. And this word here, v'tigra, means, and you hold back from praying before God. You should be praying to God. You should be asking, begging forgiveness, not saying this blasphemous nonsense. Ki alef avoncha ficha, because your sinfulness is running your speech. In other words, it's your unwillingness to recognize your own flaws that's causing you to speak this way. V'tivchar l'shon arumim, and that's why you're choosing to speak this arumim is someone who's crafty and sneaky. That's the language you're speaking. In other words, you're trying to weasel out of the fact that the bottom line is you're guilty, and that's why you're suffering. And all of your speech is just like a fancy way of trying to get away and get out of it. You think you're going to give a good speech, and that's going to be enough. Yarshiach aficha v'lo ani. Your own mouth is what makes you Yarshiach means guilty, right? V'lo ani, it is not me. I'm not the one that's making you guilty. It's you and the way you're speaking and the way you're reacting to the situation. Usvasecha ya'anuvach. Your own lips are what is arguing against you. You listen to yourself and you'll hear straight from yourself clearly what you're saying yourself is what you're guilty of. Harishon Adam Tivoled. Right? You think that you're smarter than everyone else. You think you are the first person ever to be born, right? You think you were created, you were formed before the hills and the mountains, right? You're not, you're a new kid on the block. You haven't been here longer than everyone else. You're not wiser than everyone else. Are you in some kind of secret council with God? Have you heard his secret in that secret council? V'sigra elecha chachma. And to translate this v'tigra, I'm translating it the way the Ralbag and the Metzudos translate it. There's various ways to try to translate this, but meaning, have you taken all the wisdom for yourself and therefore taken it away from others? Right? In other words, is all the wisdom in the world within you and not in everyone else? Ma yadata v'lo neda. Right? What is it that you know that we don't know? Tavin v'lo imanuhu. What is it that you understand that is not with us? There's nothing. You don't know any more than us. You're not smarter than us. You're not better than us. Remember, Eov is trying to teach them that he is. He's trying to teach them that it's not so simple. And that when you make it so simple, you're being arrogant. You're assuming that you know and understand the way God runs the world. Eliphaz is saying, nah, you don't know any more than us. He refuses to listen to what Eov is trying to tell them. So in his mind, Eov is just being stubborn. Gam Sov Gam Yosis Banu. We also have aged, in other words, wise people that are elderly. Kabir me'avicha yamim. Far much older than your father in days. In other words, we have wise people on our side that see the world the way we see it. Hama'at mimchot tanchumos el. Is it meaningless to you the comfort that you would get from God if you would change your ways? Right? Don't you want to have comfort from God? V'davar la'at imcha. Do you know some sort of secret? Is there some sort of secret that you know? Right? Don't you want God's comfort? Do you know some kind of secret that we don't know? Oh, but how much has your heart taken you away, and how much your own eyes have fooled you and tricked you or failed you. That you turn, instead of turning to God and praying, you turn to God your meaningless words, your ruach, like he said in the beginning, that your wisdom, you're just saying words that are just like wind, like nothing. And you're just pouring just meaningless words out of your mouth. What is man that he should have zuchut, meaning that he should be considered righteous, that he should be considered of merit? Right? A person is nothing. That a person who is a Yelurisha, born of woman. Remember, Eov used many of these same terms, but in a completely different way. He's saying that he should be righteous. In other words, Eov said, "Yeah, I know, I understand. If you that human beings always are going to have, there's always some flaw, some sin. Yes, that's true, but not to justify the kind of suffering that Eov had, right?" But here he's saying, Eliphaz is doubling down and saying, no, a human being is nothing, and therefore he doesn't deserve anything on this world, and he deserves the punishment that he's getting because he's a sinner. Hein biktoshav lo yamin. Um, this is true when he does not have any faith in his holy ones, right? V'shamayim lo zaku ve'enav. And when he looks at heaven and he thinks that heaven is not guiltless. In other words, when he blames God, when he blames the heavens, when he blames the way God runs the world, what's a human being before that? Of course the human is going to suffer. Afki nis'ava v'ne'elach. Even, so much so, that even when he is nit'av, even when he is, he was treated in a disgusting way, v'ne'elach, and in an exhausting way, right? And even when the person is being tortured and going through terrible suffering, he still doesn't get it. Ish soseh kemayim avla, right? He still, the man continues to drink like water. He drinks sin. He drinks wrongdoing. He drinks iniquity. In other words, even when he's in a terrible shape, he still doesn't recognize it. That's how bad a person is. Even when he's being punished, he doesn't get it. So even you, Eob, even though you're being punished, which should be enough to wake you up, you still don't get it. Achavcha shemali, I have heard your words. If I go back at where previously I translated this term to mean friendship, it could mean that here, even though the commentaries pretty much all assume this to mean his speech, like as in Yechave Da'at, right? But he speaks knowledge. So achavcha shemali could also mean, yes, I have heard your plea for brotherhood. You remember, Eob ended 2 chapters ago saying, I want your friendship, but listen to me, right? Listen to what I'm telling you, right? But he's saying, yeah, I heard your friendship. And you wanted to have friendship? I'll tell you what I saw. I'll tell you exactly what it is that I saw, how to make this work. But the most commentaries understand achavcha mean, yes, I have heard your talk, but I'm you begged me to pay attention to you. I heard your talk, but I'll tell you what I saw, and because what I saw is much more true, is much more correct. I'll tell you, asher chachamim yagidu, that which all wise men will tell you, v'lo kichadu me'avosam, and they weren't afraid to tell this to their fathers. You know, any wise person knows this to be true, and any person would say this in any context. It's almost like falling on tradition. You know, when one has an argument with somebody and he doesn't have a good answer, he falls on tradition. That's what Eliphaz seems to be doing here. Yeah, all the wise people, they'll all tell you this. It's true. Lohem levatam nitna haaretz, right? To they alone, the land was given. Velo avar zor bitocham, and the doubters, right? The zar here could often is translated as a stranger. Velo avar zor bitocham. Exactly what he's referring to here. I think this is what he means. In 18, the last verse, he said, you know, the wise men will tell you this. They weren't afraid of their elders. In other words, the wise men, the people of yore, the people from the previous generations, the wise people, they will all tell you that this is the way the world works, that evil people will suffer, like he's about to say. And lahem levadam, it is only to them, the wise people, that is who the land is given mean. We should be learning from them. And so much so that lo ovar zor, doubters didn't pass among them. They had no doubters. They were for sure. I think that this word zar means someone strange in the sense that he does not listen to those that are on those elders, those wise men, those counselors. So again, lahem livadom nitna haaretz. To they alone, the wise men was given the wisdom of the land. V'lo avar zar b'socham, and among them there were no doubters. Nobody said anything different. They all agreed on the following. And what did they all agree on? And here's the clincher. Kol yimei rashahu mischolel. All the days that an evil person lives, he is suffering. Umispar shonim nitzpenu le'aretz. And limited days on this world are set aside for he who is aretz is like an oppressor, an evil oppressor. Their lives will be cut short. Now you think while he says this, is this true? Is this what we actually see, or is Eob right? What actually happens? Is it true that every wicked person is constantly living in torment and not in happiness? Let's continue, verse 21. Kol pichodim be'aznav, bashalom shodei yivoenu. fright and fear is constantly within his ears. In peace, when he is at peace, a shodade, a person comes and attacks him. Right, a shodade is the same language as the word used for the shodedim who came and attacked Eov's property, and clearly that choice of words was chosen for a reason. Lo ya'amin shuv mini choshech. He will never have faith. He will never not faith is not really the right word, but he'll never have trust. He'll never feel secure from the darkness because it's always coming back. V'tzafoy hu elei chorev, and wherever he looks, a sword is always looking at him. He's always facing a sword. Nodeid hu lalechem ayeh. He wanders about looking, where is the bread? Yoda ki nachon biyado yom choshech. He knows that what's prepared for him is a day of darkness. So it would be wonderful if the world worked this way. And Eliphaz is insisting that this is the way the world worked, that the evil person is constantly living in terrible this way. But of course, remember, he's talking to Eov. He's telling him that this is why you're suffering. Yiva'asuhu tsaru mitzuka. He's constantly afraid and terrified of being squeezed, of being stuck in tight places, and this is really like being stuck in a place where you have nowhere to go, nowhere to maneuver. Right? Titkifehu kimelech asid lakidor. He's grabbed by fear, similar to a king who knows that he's about to be overpowered in a siege, in a war. Kinata el yado. Because why? Why is this that he's suffering this way? Because he raised his hand against God. V'el Shaddai Kabor. And he decided to be the hero against God himself. Yorutz elov bitzavor. He ran towards God bitzavar with his neck raised high, with arrogance. Ba'avi gabe maginov. With the thickness of his with the thickness of his body, right, which he takes as his protection. He thinks he's powerful and strong. He'll run towards God with pride, with gava. Because his face is covered with fat, vayas pima ale kosel, and his loins are covered with rolls of fat. In other words, he's living a life of luxury, so he thinks he has everything. He thinks he's strong. He thinks he can raise his hand against God. V'yishkon orim nikchados, and he's living in cities that are eventually going to be destroyed. Batim lo yeshvu lamo, and houses that he's in, they will not remain settled. Asher hit atedu legalim, they are set aside. That in the future they are going to end up just heaps of stones. Lo ye'eshar v'lo yakum chelo, he will not become wealthy, and his wealth, whatever he has, will not last. V'lo yitel la'oretz min lam. I'm going to use the Ramban's way of understanding this as min lam is like min lahem, right? The portion given to them shall not be spread upon the earth, right? Shall never, it won't last, it won't make it. Lo yasur mini choshech yonakto tiyabe shal havetz v'yasur buruach piv. He will never get away from darkness. Darkness will always be upon him. Yonakto, his children, right? Tiyabe shal havetz will be dried out in flames. V'yasur buruach piv, and he will be removed from this earth with the breath of his mouth. Al ya'amein bashov nitah. He will never have a confidence. He will never feel confident, right? Bashovnita. He will be misled by liars, by falseness. Kishav tiyet muraso, because what he's going to get temura, what he's going to get repaid with, is going to be falseness. That's how he's going to get repaid, because of his evil ways. Below yomoti mole, he will complete his life. He will. He'll finish his body's time on this earth below yomo, before his day, v'chipaso lo ra'anana, and his chipaso here is translated in various ways, but in most understand this to mean the branches, right, will never become like it. Ra'anan is a tree that has bright, wide, green branches. That his branches will never become that way. This is a reference to his children, his family. So not only will he suffer, but he won't see. His children will not prosper. Yachmos kagefen bisro. He will drop like his unripe grapes, like they will fall. In other words, his grapes, his fruit, his family, what comes from him will just drop on the ground and wither away. V'yashlech kazayas nitzaso, and he will throw like an olive. He will drop his, like an olive branch drops its blossoms. He will drop its blossoms. So whatever beauty that came from him will be gone. Ki adas chonef kalmud. Why is that? Because the company, adas, the company, the those that are the group, the club even of the chonef, of the flatterer, is galmud, is loneliness, because that's what he ends up. He ends up not having any friends. Ve'esh achla ahale shochad, and flames end up eating and burning down the families or the tents, the families and homes of a person who is a briber. Haro amal v'yalod oven. Why? Because what he has become pregnant with, haro amal, is just amal, is not suffering. I'm trying to get the right word. Amal is iniquity and evil. V'yalod oven, and what he gave birth to is sin. Uvitnam tachin mirma, and the wombs of the evil people have simply created mirma, which is lying and cheating and deceit. So this is how Eliphaz describes what happens to the evil person, and clearly Eliphaz is directing this to Eov, and Eliphaz is claiming that this is how the world works, that a evil person, will suffer this incredibly graphic and dramatic description of the suffering of a person who lives a life of evil, who does not humble himself before God, pray to God, and repent before God. And all human beings, is what Eliphaz is hinting, really deserve this, because all human beings are sinners. Unless you repent, unless you pray, unless you approach God, then you will be redeemed from this kind of suffering. So this is Eliphaz's speech, much harsher, much stronger than his previous ones. And in the next chapter 16, we're going to hear Eov's response. You can probably guess what kind of tack Eov is going to take. It's going to be a very interesting response, though. Looking forward to studying chapter 16 together with you. Thank you for studying chapter 15. Have a wonderful day.